Okay. So I talked earlier about how I came to the center, that I'd had this spiritual experience. So now I want to sort of tell you a little bit about that experience. It essentially started me on my spiritual journey. And so when I was about 17 years old, I was invited by a friend of mine, who actually was the guy who brought me ultimately to the center, the guy I mentioned that brought me, that said we should go to London. And he said that there was this yoga class in his village, and so and he invited that we should go. So we went for this yoga class, and the thing that I really liked, was at the very end of it, you do this thing that's like corpse pose or asana or whatever, where you basically lay there like you're dead and you just let the whole body relax. And I really, really enjoyed that. It was really, really, really special. It was almost, in a sense, my first introduction to sort of meditating. And then the instructor, this woman, actually said she recommended a book that we should maybe buy. And it was a book by this American who'd lived in India and studied yoga. And it was pretty much all about like yoga asanas and so on. But the very last chapter was on meditation. And the first sort of line was, that meditation is like the harmony between your outer life and your inner life. It literally means oneness or harmony. So I thought, wow, that was really, really cool. And he kind of basically gave you like this little exercise. And at the time, I was into sports. I played, many kind of like team sports and stuff, and ran cross country and stuff like that. And I somehow, my initial idea was that like, I needed this kind of relaxation and whatever. And so I thought, if I meditated for 5 minutes before I go to sleep, this somehow would really, really help me with my sports. And then I got the inspiration to do it like in the morning when I would wake up for 5 minutes. So that was kind of my initial idea, my initial introduction to meditation. And then I was like a crazy guy. I was 17. I was a little bit into like, smoking dope and so on, And so I had this kind of like almost like two different lives. did have this crazy sort of outer life, and then I was now starting this sort of like more sedate sort of like inner life. So, and at that time, because I said I was like 17, I lived with my parents. I had my own room in the house and everything in the front of the house. And so one night, I was having what I thought was a dream. I wake up from this dream, which I thought was maybe like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm screaming, like I've had some sort of like, like horrific dream or something, and I'm screaming for some reason. So my first thought was, if I scream like this, I'm gonna wake my parents up next door, I'm gonna like wake everybody in the house. But the moment I thought that, I suddenly became aware of the fact that the sound was sort of in my head, but if I focused on my mouth, all I could hear was like air coming out. There was no sound. I wasn't actually crying, screaming out loud. It was all in my head. And then when that sort of calmed down, once I came to that realization and calmed down, it stopped, obviously. And then it was almost like this. I had windows, the way my room was, the windows were sort of there. And as I said, it was maybe like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, but I noticed that it was light outside. And slowly, this light seemed to come into the room and fill the room, and the room lit up. And I'm sitting up in bed, actually, at this point, because I had sort of jumped up in bed from this dream. And so as the room became lighter, I had like the door that entered into my room was sort of over here, and I noticed a figure standing in the doorway, which for some reason, one thought that came into my head was this name, Agni, which I had no idea what Agni meant. And then I realized that there was this figure standing there, and that this figure, for some reason, even though I got this name Agni, I had the feeling that it was a woman, but she was veiled, so I couldn't actually see her face or anything. And as I become more aware of her, she started to approach me. And as she got close, and I was kind of wondering what was going on, and as she got close, she sort of brought out her arms like this, and I then became thinking, oh, she's going to come and strangle me. But I was totally calm with this whole thing. It didn't upset me or didn't sort of like, freak me out or anything. So I just sort of sat there, and then she got closer and closer, and eventually, sure enough, she put her hands around my throat, and then I just sort of surrendered. And as I surrendered to it, I sort of fell back into sleep. And the next thing I know, I was waking up in the morning. But when I woke up in the morning, I couldn't decide whether I just had some kind of crazy dream or if this was actually happened, if it was reality. And so that kind of left this question: what really happened? And again, I had a couple of friends that had kind of got into meditation and spirituality, and one of them said to me, "Oh, you had a spiritual experience." So that was my first, time that I ever heard anything about spiritual experience. So, and I didn't know really what that meant, but it sort of had left, as I said, it left this question. I needed an answer to what really happened. And so they said, well, you should go to you go to spiritual groups and try and find, see if that I can explain to you what's really happening. And so, the thing was, there were 2 or 3 different spiritual groups at that time that I knew of in the UK. So I would go for different meetings, like with the Hare Krishnas. There was this one called Divine Light or something like that. I can't even remember now. And and I would go there, and when they had an opportunity, you had an opportunity to ask a question. I would explain what happened in a short version, and then I'd say, so what do you think happened? Can you explain it to me? And they would all give me an explanation, but it didn't seem to satisfy me in any way. And so it sort of started me on this journey towards finding this answer, which ultimately led to me getting these books of Guru's, and then reading them, and then feeling like what Guru was writing about in his books was kind of like satisfying and like answering partly some of my questions. And then I talked about how when I came eventually to the London Centre, and then I saw the Transcendental for the first time and had this experience with this light from the third eye, it was as though that was the answer to my question. I didn't need an answer as to what was the actual specific part of, was it real or was it just a dream? It didn't matter anymore, because I'd found the place that I'd kind of been seeking. So that was kind of, that sort of experience, my new experience of coming to the centre, to finding Guru.